everybody. Welcome to week 4. Week 4 marks a pretty cool, I think, shift in content from the sort of beginning, getting to know you kind of chapters, where you're learning about some of the theories and learning what gender even means, because you might not even know that the first week or two. Totally normal if you're in that case. And then this week we're going to start talking about the patterns. So what I always tell students, okay, so first thing you should notice is that we skipped a couple chapters of reading. We're coming back to those, but we're going to chapter 5, which is on gendered verbal communication, and that's on purpose. Next week we'll talk about nonverbals. This week we're talking about verbals. And what you're going to notice is that the author of this textbook, it goes over some of the patterns that we typically associate with masculinity and femininity in terms of communication patterns. So for example, a masculine behavior tends to be that the person is more direct. We associate that with masculinity, and women tend to apologize more, and we tend to associate those kind of more indirect or hedging statements with femininity. And if you measure that, especially the apology thing, which that has some pretty serious cultural implications, women do that more often. People who are genetically female do that more often. And so there's kind of an interesting play there, because it's not, communication isn't biological, basically. So very, very little of communication comes down to biology. It's just like the tiny little bit, which means that all the stuff that they're talking about in chapter 5, gendered verbal communication, of these are quote unquote masculine behaviors and these are quote unquote feminine behaviors, but we can measure that and say that, yeah, a lot of females do these things and a lot of males do these things. Not 100%, but a good number. And then our culture associates those things with that. Well, that's because we got taught that. That's how we got taught to behave. And that's what they're saying here. So keep that in mind, that this stuff isn't biological. There's no genetic reason why a female would apologize more. That is something in our culture that we were, or at least in American culture is probably a better way of putting it, that we were taught to do. And you go to other cultures, I bet that apology thing does not hold up in other cultures. That's pretty important to notice. And that's why I'm telling you, it's not biological. It's socialized. It's all stuff that we got trained to do. So she's going to talk about what some of those behaviors are. I just gave you a couple examples, but keep in mind, she's organizing the masculinity and the femininity thing as ways of talking about gendered patterns, and those are the two that are easy to demonstrate. But clearly, people run the whole spectrum of presentation. So, and you might be more masculine communication in one area than in the next context in your life. And a little bit she talks about appearance in the nonverbal section, but appearance is just like one thing, and it's in the nonverbal part, not in the verbal part. So there's lots of things that go with gendered communication that have nothing to do with the way you're physically dressed or the way you present, and it has to do with the way you talk and the kinds of choices that you made, even the tone in your voice. Another example, I'll give that, I just thought of a different example, but I think it's actually nonverbal, so I'll give you that example next week. But the apology thing would definitely be one. And then men or masculine communication style is, one of the hallmarks of it is to be direct. So, and typically men are more direct than women. We can measure that. It makes me uncomfortable, even that's a thing, but it's something that we've been socialized into in American culture. And in other cultures, men don't talk like that. Some cultures, men are very direct, but in other cultures, they're not that direct. So I want you to think about those things as you read through this chapter and do some of the homework for this week, and explore some of the topics in the discussion and in the other assignments that you have going. Okay? Have a good week. It's going to be fun. You're going to learn exactly the first parts of what we mean when we talk about gendered communication. And then next week is I'm really tripping over stuff in this video. Next week we talk about nonverbal communication, how that's gendered. And then after that we do a little bit of history, and then the second half of the semester we will be talking about how the gendered communication stuff applies in certain situations. So we'll get into more nuance and more detail. All right. Have fun doing the reading and getting to know some of these communication practices that you're gonna recognize a lot of them.